solutions consultant at LinkedIn. He has an experience of around 8 years of working, 5 years and 8 months with Zycus, and 16 months with LinkedIn. So in the last 16 months, Adhish has been directly involved with talent acquisition. And even before that, he has been directly or indirectly been involved with talent acquisition. He's helped he's helped a lot of companies, a lot of startups actually gain and get the right talent for their companies and for their institutes. And I'm sure you all are in for a treat today. When we sent out the links for this webinar, we had mentioned a special question wherein we asked the students if there's some specific question which you would like to ask. Many students reported to us saying that, whether electrical engineers will have a future. Obviously, they will. That is true, because no industry goes off or shuts off directly. There were a few students who asked us one specific question, that if there is a specific company or specific role that I would like to target, how do I target it and how do I achieve it? Well, I'll tell you, this seminar will cover it all, right from how the COVID-19 has affected our economy, the job scenario, as well as how you can upskill yourself, and also, what things will actually be there in the future and how you should have an approach to get the job which you desire. Mr. Adhish Rane is an amazing orator, as much as I've seen, and I'm sure you all will feel the same once the webinar is over. Before we begin, I'd like to mention some guidelines. Please turn off your mics and video cameras so there is no interruption in between. Also, if there are any questions that you would like to ask, you can please comment in the messages or in the chat section. I'll have it delivered to Mr. Rane and he shall answer all of your doubts. So do not worry about your doubts being unanswered. Please text them in the chat box or text them in the message area. All right. So thank you for your presence. I'll now hand it over to Mr. Rane. Mr. Rane, the audience is all yours.
Thank you so much. That's a pretty awesome introduction that you've already given. I'm sure you've already set the expectations quite high. So just give me a moment before I'm able to share my screen. Yes. So team, again, very good morning to all of you. Thank you so much for having me over. As already, Lennon has introduced me. My name is Adhish Rane. I am an alumni of the esteemed institution that is St. Francis Institute of Technology. And yes, I work as a talent solutions consultant at LinkedIn. LinkedIn, for those of you who may not know, so LinkedIn is the world's largest professional network. And we have a member base of about, around 650 million odd members across the globe. So what does it mean to be a talent solutions consultant? What is it that I exactly do at LinkedIn? Is that I work with organizations to help them plan their talent strategy. I help them go out and hire top talent, as well as help them develop this particular talent. So what do I mean by that? Is the talent marketplace is a very competitive marketplace, right? So nowadays, especially with regards to millennials, there are different wants, there are different needs that millennials have when it comes to their ideal job. Not everyone runs behind salaries. People look at finding the better role, a meatier purpose in the role that they're doing. Also, the work culture kind of plays a very important role in job-related decisions. So I help organizations compete with other organizations for this talent perspective. I kind of make their value proposition as an employer very attractive by helping them, reach out to talent on LinkedIn, attract them, engage with them in different sort of media, whether be it videos that talk about who they are as an organization. Why should anyone consider working for them and not for anybody else? So something of that nature. So I help them formulate this messaging on LinkedIn. I also help them directly, proactively as well as reactively reach out to candidates. And also once they have hired people, I help them in sort of revamping their learning and development landscape so that they can basically create learning paths for their employees and just make sure that the attrition rates go down and they keep their employees happy. So that's more or less what I do at LinkedIn. So Today's session, which is 2020, the job aftermath. I was just speaking to Lennon last night about this, and I was just mentioning that I was kind of eccentric as well as nervous at the same time, to approach this conversation. Eccentric because it's the first time I'm doing a webinar of this sort on this particular situation, and nervous as well because I have been in this situation before, right? So I've been in your exact position. I have been an engineering student uh, in my fourth year. When I entered my fourth year, the placement scenarios, I know what it's exactly like to not be placed, how to go ahead searching for a job, what's really the world like out there, once you're done with your engineering, and if say you don't have a placement, how does that work out? How do placement scenarios even work out? What really goes on in your head, right? And how is the corporate culture very different from what we imagine it to be? So I know all of it, and of course, there are a lot of things that I always think that if somebody would have told me this when I was in my final year, then it probably would have eased out some of the efforts that I did, right? So at the end of the session, I won't say that is going to shake your destinies per se, but I'm pretty much sure I'm going to equip you with a lot of things where you can do that for yourself, especially in times where the things that are in your control are pretty much limited. So what's therefore the agenda for today's session is that we are going to cover, the current market situation because of COVID-19, how it has resulted, the entire trickling effect, and how it has basically affected jobs or salary cuts or hiring freezes, how it has basically changed organizational priorities. Especially what it means for students and professionals who are seeking job opportunities, students who are entering their final years or who already have placements, and those who are even planning their postgraduate programs. So what does it mean for them? And for those who are looking out for jobs, both students as well as professionals, how do you go about and seek these private placements, right? How do you reduce your dependency on, say, the placement cells of your college and vouch for yourself, reach out to the right people and find yourself a job? And of course, there's a lot of talk around digital learning and what kind of skills you should be really learning. Of course, it does make sense when you say that everything you cannot just go about learning anything and everything, right? You need to find out skills that basically suit the role that you want to get into or things that you really want to do ahead. So how do you identify that? What are some of the emerging domains in the market right now? What are the emerging skills in the market? What are the different titles that are upcoming which you can focus your attention on? And of course, we are going to have a major chunk of the session that talks about where we'll be addressing some of the questions that you'll be posting in the chatter, and we'll be having some responses to it. So to begin with, the current market situation due to COVID-19, I'm going to talk about how it is basically started sometime in February, early February, and how it has gone on to impact the entire market situation, right? So the very first thing that happened when coronavirus set in was all sorts of international travel. Uh, Transport, everything basically got affected. So the very immediate jobs that it immediately affected were daily wage workers, people who were involved in jobs that are related to transportation or travel. So everything right from your Uber drivers, Ola drivers, Lyft drivers, people in the aviation industry, hotels, restaurants, even people in the hospitality sector, they were the worst hit because of the coronavirus situation, and these were the first ones to get hit. Now, what this situation exactly did was a lot of organizations, depend on suppliers for raw materials, etc., who are based in other countries, right? So once there is a restriction on travel, it of course the first disruption that is also going to cause in the supply chain is going to be a massive supply chain disruption because raw materials are not going to be available, right? And even if organizations do manufacture things locally, to get their goods to the market becomes kind of an issue because there is a logistics disruption. So what this basically did was, I know a lot of you could relate to this, that there was a lot of gap in terms of the demand and supply in the market. So, like for example, for FMCG goods, like once the lockdown restrictions were kind of imposed, everyone started going haywire. People started panic buying, and panic buying basically means that demand for certain goods kept on rising, right? So the supply remained as it was. The supply kept on decreasing rather, and the demand kept on increasing. These kind of situations, of course, put a huge pressure on the economy. They put a huge pressure on the organizations that are manufacturing these kind of goods. And the more the gap keeps on widening, the more it starts affecting workers and jobs at the same time. Organizations do not have enough cash flowing in to pay employees, or even employees are working at their plants as well as in their corporate offices. And this kind of sets a very trickling effect where, say, if I'm working for an FMCG organization and I don't really have any source of income that's coming in because of closed operations, it's going to impact my buying decisions as well. So we saw this effect starting to trickling down from FMCG goods, automotive, so on and so forth. And what basically happened was all sorts of organizations across the world, right from US until Australia, a lot of them started relooking at their investment patterns, right? So the first thing that you do when you know that there's going to be a lockdown, you don't know for how long this is going to prevail, right? So the first thing that you're going to do is make sure that your employees are safe. You're going to relook at how exactly are you going to sustain for this unpredictable amount of time without having any new sort of revenue coming. Because of course, if nobody is getting out of their homes, you're not going to get a lot of new revenue coming in because people are not really going to buy. So this is kind of forced or coerced organizations into relooking at their investment plans. There's been a lot of change in buying patterns, and what it has basically resulted in, and this is my analysis, that now organizations find themselves in two basic sorts of crisis, right? So one is an executional crisis, and one is an existential crisis. So what do I mean by this? It's pretty simple. It's pretty. I mean, it's the hints in the name itself, right? So executional crisis is crisis that like your large scale enterprises or enterprises face, because these are the organizations that are cash rich organizations. They have very strong balance sheets, so there is not really a threat of existence to these organizations in these particular times. But of course, the issue that they face is how do they go about executing their plans, right? So to keep getting more and more revenue is a challenge for them. So these are the kind of organizations who don't really have a lot of job cuts per se, but these are the ones that could implement salary cuts. To give you an example, NTT Data, so NTT stands for Nippon Telegraph and Telecommunication. So NTT Data is one of the world's largest IT service providers. They have a huge presence in India as well. So the moment coronavirus hit, the first thing that NTT Data did was they announced salary cuts of about 15 to 20% for all their employees, right? So there's not really been any sort of job cuts. They might be putting a hiring freeze now, but the first thing that immediately happened was salary cuts. So organizations that are going to face an executional crisis, the large scale enterprises or the enterprises, are the ones that are not really going to have a lot of job cuts at this point in time. But of course, they face execution issues. Now, on the other hand, you have existential crisis, right? So a lot of startups, a lot of small and medium enterprises, any organization that has employees from one employee until 1,000 employees basically fall under this particular category. So these are growing organizations. So naturally, they depend on a lot of income that comes from projects, especially IT service organizations or IT product organizations. And what basically happens is they do not have enough revenue to sustain themselves over an unforeseen period of time. So what basically happens is it's a threat to their existence if they do not really lay off people or if they do not really have salary cuts. Now, in some cases, yes, there has been salary cuts. Yes, there has been job cuts. Yes, there has been hiring freezes. But some organizations have also dependent on furlough schemes. Okay, so for those of you who may not know what furlough means, furlough is basically a scheme in which you do not pay employees until and unless they work, right? It's not really applicable to a lot of IT organizations because IT organizations can still work from home. But for a lot of small businesses that are into, say, manufacturing, where you require employees to be there on the plant to be a part of the manufacturing process, since they cannot really work from home. So what happens is the companies do not pay them unless and until they resume work. So that's a furlough scheme. It's been implemented by a lot of organizations. In fact, even in the UK, a lot of football clubs are coming out with the furlough scheme. So for all their non-playing staff, they basically don't pay them as long as football operations don't resume. So there's just a very small example of how these things work. So what I've done is I've taken some snippets of what really has been the impact in terms of both existential as well as executional crisis. So in terms of executional crisis, you can see that organizations like Ryanair have already cut down 3,000 jobs. Silicon Valley is already bracing itself for what is going to be a really tough time. Over here, you can see that one of the organizations that's facing an existential crisis is a Pune-based IT firm. So the name of this organization is System Plus Technologies. They've already fired 100 employees. There's a 30% salary cut, despite the government regulations or not really having any form of job cuts. So these organizations find it a bit difficult because they have a lot of project-based hiring that goes on, and they don't really have any other option but to really cut the jobs that are already there. So these are some of the things. Also, contract laborers have been facing a lot of issues. Like you can see, Uber, Lyft, Airbnb. A lot of their employees are really contract workers. They are not really employees per se, so they don't have the benefits of employees. They are on contract, so their services can be immediately terminated. Another example, just to sort of add a candid example with this, if I know that a lot of you might have grown up watching the WWE. So even WWE wrestlers, just for your information, they are not really employees. They are contract workers. So a lot of them have also run out of their contracts. I mean, it's not really a huge thing as compared to the whole market and where it's moving. But yeah, it's a significant example that we can probably relate to. Salary cuts, as you can see, Reliance Industries has also announced that there's been significant salary pay cuts. Mukesh Ambani himself has announced that he's going to forego his salary for a major part of the year. Indigo has already announced that they have announced, I think, about 50% salary cut for all their senior management employees as well as the mid-management employees. India is already looking at an unemployment rate of about 27.11%. We had an internal call where some LinkedIn economists were also present. We were looking at a global situation, and it has already been predicted that the US unemployment rate is going to go beyond 10%. Just to sort of give you a benchmark, so 10% will, even if it reaches 10%, it will be way more than the economic recession of 2008. So we are already in a position that's not really looking as optimistic as it was back in 2008. So how has it basically changed organizational priorities? So of course, one of the biggest things that has happened is a lot of organizations weren't really prepared for this kind of change. So all of them have sort of like whoever can really move in that direction, like IT product services organizations, they started moving to a remote workforce sort of a setup. So that's been tipped to be the new age workforce, and it's also being said that this is going to be the new norm. Whether that happens or not, like it's a case that we can look at it for, but some organizations are already taking steps in that direction. So TCS has already announced that 75% of its employees are going to work from home, even when situations resume normalcy. Even at LinkedIn, we are contemplating having a work from home setup for all employees, even when things get back to normal. Now, what happened was, a lot of, like in India, we've been really talking about digital transformation since ages, right? It's the most abused word that comes second after the word strategy, perhaps. So a lot of organizations have been talking about digital transformation, but everyone has been working at their own pace towards this, right? And this kind of situation just basically throws all those plans aboard. And what has basically happened is it has coerced organizations into this work from home setup. So a lot of things have changed. One is hiring has become more virtual. So organizations are hiring people virtually now. There are a lot of virtual interviews that are happening. Whoever is hiring, that is, onboarding happens virtually. Organizations are focusing on whoever gets onboarded virtually. How do they make sure that they have the appropriate hardware as well as software requirements met so that they can commence working? So that's been a major priority for organizations. And apart from that, even there's been a huge productivity dip. Because not everyone is accustomed to working from home. So, productivity boosting sessions, really having internal communication systems in order so that, even managers can manage efficiency and productivity in a better manner is one of the priorities of organizations. Secondly, mental and physical well-being. Of course, mental well-being is an important aspect because there's a lot of unpredictability because we don't know when the situation is going to end. So a lot of mental health programs are being run by organizations. Physical well-being is basically for organizations like Zomato who have employees that are customer facing. So for them, safety is of paramount importance. Now, one thing that's very important, one thing that's quite notable in this situation is employer branding, right? So what does employer branding means is that when organizations really want to talk about, why anyone should consider working for them, right? Which is what I basically mentioned at the start of this particular program. A lot of organizations talk about what they're doing in this situation because even if you're a student, even if you're a professional, even if you are an existing employee of an organization, you would want to hear from organizations in terms of what are they doing about this current situation? What do they plan to do? Is there anything that they're doing to help people? Is there anything that they're doing to help this particular situation? So just to give you an example, what organizations are talking about. So L'Oreal, for example, it's a huge cosmetics manufacturer. So what L'Oreal has done is L'Oreal has kind of pivoted their business, and now they're manufacturing a lot of sanitizers. They're making it available to a lot of areas that are severely affected because of coronavirus. Decathlon is another example. Decathlon has actually come out with this very innovative sort of method of converting snorkeling masks into makeshift ventilators. So a lot of organizations are talking about everything, right from innovations that they're doing, like even for Lego Group. So in Lego Group, I think one of the employees in China has come out with some comics that basically talk to kids about this particular situation, that educate them and basically tell them not to be afraid. So there are a lot of things organizations are doing, and they're talking about it. In fact, the total number of posts by organizations on LinkedIn has increased by 26% since the coronavirus has set in. So, and that's a huge, huge growth, right? The other aspect, of course, digital learning. It's a huge impetus for digital learning. A lot of organizations, when they know that productivity is a huge issue, there is a lot of situations that are not in their hand. Digital learning has kind of come to the forefront in terms of priorities. And just to kind of give you an idea of what the market landscape is like for digital learning, I know that some of you may have already done a couple of courses. So in digital learning, on LinkedIn Learning platform itself. So LinkedIn Learning is the flagship learning platform of LinkedIn. And between February and March, so from February to March, we have seen a rise of about 26% rise in content consumption. So it's 46% rise in content consumption. That's a total of about 750,000 hours. That's 750,000 hours worth of content consumption. Uh, Roughly approximately that's about 86 years worth of content. So there's a huge jump. 86 years is almost like watching Game of Thrones 11,800 odd times, and that's a lot of Game of Thrones watching, by the way. So yes, digital learning is a top priority for organizations as well as people who are finding jobs, as well as students. A lot of people have been asking me that, is it really beneficial to do a lot of courses? Does it really help in getting a job? Well, it depends on what kind of courses you're doing. And we'll be discussing that even in the later segment, where I'll be talking about emerging skills and why is there a need to upskill yourself, and what should you even upskill yourself in. So I'll be talking about those things in detail, but right now it's one of the priorities for organizations. A lot of hiring has now been limited only for temporarily adjusted demand, which is replacement hires majorly. So people who are already leaving the organization, so only replacements for those employees. In some cases, of course, when work from home becomes the norm, tech support also kind of becomes of paramount importance. So a lot of tech support hiring has been going on. So that's something. So there are some areas where organizations are still hiring. So be it sales, be it tech support, these roles are pretty much in demand still. So these are the roles that are getting filled, as well as some replacement hires. And of course, cost cutting measures are always going to be a norm. So staffing firms have basically gotten the boot amidst other services that have basically been affected. So what does this mean for students? And that brings me to the most important part of this presentation, as to how students and professionals are going to get affected by this. So what I've basically done is I've created this sort of job pyramid. If you've, in your school days, you might have gone through the food pyramid, which basically has the apex predators at the top and everything below that in terms of the decreasing order of their dependencies, right? So I am going to explain this job pyramid, which basically covers everything right from senior management folks until graduate and postgraduate students, and how this entire situation has affected them. So three factors here that are in major consideration is one, job cuts, one is salary cuts, and hiring freezes, right? So for senior management folks, there are not really a lot of job cuts. There are not really hiring freezes, because organizations are looking from a long-term standpoint, right? So the perspective that organizations have is, even when the situation resumes normalcy, we want to have our head in place. We don't really want to be scrambling for senior management folks, because that's a core part of our team. So whenever operations resume normalcy, we want the core part of our team to be intact. So still a lot of senior management hiring has been going on, that remains unaffected. The max that we've seen organizations do is impose salary cuts. The examples that I already gave you was Air Indigo. It was also with Reliance. A lot of organizations are basically just announcing salary cuts, not really a lot of job cuts or high increases for senior management. As you keep moving down the ladder, you can quite well assume that the salary cuts are going to go in an increasing order. So are going to be the job cuts and the hiring freezes. Mid management, only the roles that are benefiting out of this in some cases are operation managers. They still don't see a lot of impact on their roles. But one aspect of mid management that has basically been affected is HR managers, because there are not really a lot of HR requirements at this point of time. But of course, the worst affected are the associate, entry level, and the later half, the second half of the pyramid. So for associates and entry levels, a lot of organizations, what they're doing is they're trying to trim their existing workforce, uh, where they're expecting employees to still do 100% of their numbers, whatever other targets that are set for them. And if in case that's not really met, they're looking to trim their workforce, so probably bring more senior resources in. Instead of multiple resources. Just to give you an example, so my ex organization is doing this, that they're expecting associate or entry level folks to still meet their numbers. And let's say there are two resources on 5 lakhs per annum package each. If they are basically cleansed, then there will be senior employees on a package. There will be one senior employee hired for two at a package of 8 lakhs per annum. So they basically also have a saving. They also have somebody senior that's coming in, and they're also trimming their workforce. So well, organizations are getting a bit crafty with regards to how they are handling the situation, but different organizations have different ways of how they handle the situation. For contract workers, freelancers, yes, I've already given you examples of Uber, as well as the World Wrestling Entertainment, and other contract workers who are basically facing a lot of issues. Freelancers, not really the best time for them, but also there's a ray of hope for freelancers, because organizations are not really willing to invest in full-time employees. So in some cases, some activities like maybe social media marketing could be outsourced to a lot of freelancers who are willing to do this job for them, right? So that's an opportunity for freelancers, which is majorly from a marketing perspective, even from an HR perspective. So a lot of roles that are non-technical roles are benefiting from this particular situation, for freelance roles in particular. Now down to the most important aspect, which is graduate and postgraduate students, right? So what does this mean for students? Now, I've been having a lot of messages that are coming to me from a lot of MBA students. MBA students seem to be a lot affected, because those that are already placed have their joining dates that are already deferred. So, for example, Google, Facebook have already announced that they are not going to have any employees, join in, or they are not going to begin their office operations anytime before October, and that's to say the least. So before October, there's not really going to be a lot of onboarding that's happening. A lot of offers not just have been deferred, a lot of them have also been taken back, especially by small, medium-sized businesses. So that's kind of put a lot of second-year MBA students in a bit of a soup. First-year students have basically lost their internship opportunities that were rolled out to them. I have a lot of emails that are coming in from first-year students asking for internship opportunities, asking to be introduced to some recruiters, because they have lost on their internships. So that's something that's there. For engineering graduates, also the situation is not really that great. And in total, between graduate and postgraduate students, there are about 60,000 people who are already jobless, and in this year, right? So between engineering and MBA students solely, this year we have 60,000 people who are jobless, and this number, I'm not sure how the number looks like for next year, but it's estimated that this number could possibly end up being doubled by next year. So that's a cause of concern. So placements, what are our placements? Placement season. We do see that the placement season will get divided into two staggered halves. One is your Sem 7, one is your Sem 8, especially for engineering students. And for the first half, it's pretty much going to remain dud, because a lot of organizations are going to take precautionary measures, not really go full-fledged on placement seasons. We do see that for tier 1 colleges, the placements could drop by about 10 to 15%. And for tier 2 colleges, the numbers could go up to 50%. So that's how the placement situation looks like. Now, one of the top Kolkata engineering colleges, so one of the top engineering colleges in Kolkata, their training and placement officer has basically been quoted as saying that students might have to apply privately for placements from this year onwards, sort of reduce their dependency on the college-based placements. So that is one view that we've seen coming forward. But we see that even students by the end of their final years, once they enter into the corporate world, this is what they'll be heavily relying on. Personally, I've kind of been in this situation before. I know what it exactly feels like to end your college and not really have a sort of placement. and what the job market looks like after that. And what basically happens is you end up competing with a lot of people from previous batches who are not really placed, a lot of professionals who are still hunting for jobs, who still have work experiences that are more than you, and it kind of makes the situation entirely difficult for you. So I'm going to be talking about how you can exactly solve for that and how you can structure your final years to make sure that you end up with a job by the end of it. So that's something that I'm going to be talking about. But yes, in terms of also postgraduate programs, now postgraduate programs are affected in some ways, but it's also a boon for a lot of students because there is a bit of speculation when it comes to H-1B visas, also with regards to student visas. What are universities really doing? So some universities, firstly, it's a good thing for students because they have more amount of time. I think the deadlines have been pushed from May to June already in terms of selecting the colleges that you want to apply for. So that's one good thing for students. That is additional amount of time. Second is that now students will be given a chance to choose or have a pick between colleges based on the financial aid that they're providing. So because a lot of universities understand that not everyone could be able to afford their education, given the current situation affecting jobs. So they are going to be providing a lot of financial aids, and it would be a viable reason for you to choose or to pick one university above the other solely on basis of reasons of financial aid. So that's something that's really positive. So that's it from a postgraduate perspective. Also, one more thing is that a lot of universities are contemplating, starting off their fall curriculum virtually, and then once things resume normalcy, they could possibly have students travel down to their campuses. So that's one thing that they are contemplating, but there's still no official statement on that front. So how do you get a placement, right? How not to really depend on others from a placement perspective? How do you go about finding a job? So finding a private placement is a bit tricky, and I would urge you to pay your utmost attention for the next couple of minutes, because what I'm about to tell you is exactly how do you go and find a job. And a lot of us do not do this because a lot of us just rely on applying for a job and expecting that someone is going to reach out to us offering us a job. Well, it doesn't really work that way, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. So what happens is the tricky thing about private placements is that, let's say you're a student who's in your final year of engineering, right? Now, when you apply to a job off campus, what typically happens is that organizations, when they hire people off campus, they usually want people who can immediately join, right? Typically, even when professionals jump from one organization to another, there is a notice period that they serve, and this notice period is max up to say 2 to 3 months. It's not really more than that. So what happens is organizations are not really willing to wait for a time that's more than 3 months. Some organizations, well, they do say that, okay, we are going to give you, or we are going to offer you a placement sometime in a seventh semester. We are okay to have you join us sometime in May or June once your exams, even your final semester exams basically end. That's not always the case, right? So what I've done is I've divided your entire fourth year into two stages. One is stage one, which will essentially be your Sem 7 as well as the time that you currently have once your Sem 6 exams are basically done. So what activities that you can basically focus on is building your brand. So what do I mean by building your brand is, first, have yourself registered on all portals that you can find, all job portals that you can find. So be it imjobs.com, be it naukri.com, be it Monster, be it Indeed, be it Shine, be it timesjobs.com, be it linkedin.com. Build your profile on this, and building your brand is very different from just building your profile. Building your profile is just the first step towards it, right? So you basically create your presence, your existence on these platforms, and then you start building your brand. So a lot of people have a lot of notions about what a personal brand means, and there are a lot of sayings around it. One of it is that your brand is basically what people talk about you, when you're not there in the room. Well, that's kind of true, but majorly, if you look at it from a presence perspective, from a social media presence perspective, at least in LinkedIn, your brand is basically constituted of three factors, right? One, the first and the foremost factor is your identity, right? So who are you? What's your educational background like? Which college are you graduating from? What is your area of specialization? If you're a working professional, what was your last title? What organization you working at? What were your roles and responsibilities in that particular organization? What are the skill sets that you currently possess? And not just, and skill sets does not essentially mean things that you learn in your syllabus, and you just add them because you've theoretically gained some expertise in that. But how are these skills applicable, right? What really talks about what are your motivations in life, really? What do you really like to do? So on and so forth. Do you have any volunteering experience? So that basically talks about your identity and who you are, right? So one of the issues that I faced, to be very honest, when I was in my final year of engineering and I was applying, for a lot of organizations, I was applying for placements. One thing that you will also notice, the moment you start creating your resumes, right? And if you keep your 10 standard marks, your 12 standard marks, your engineering percentages, in which you don't even have your Sem 7, Sem 8 results, because in the initial part of your Sem 7, you haven't even given those exams, right? So you just have approximate aggregates. You maybe have experience from working in your college, cultural festivals, technical festivals. You have hobbies like reading, writing, and traveling. And once you start making your resume, you yourself will realize that there is not a lot of difference that you and your other peers are going to have, right, in terms of your resumes. How do you really stand out, right? Why should anyone really select you above anybody else, right? You do have certain expertise, you do have a lot of qualities. A lot of people do say that, yes, I have dedication, I can work better in a team, I'm good at team collaboration. But these are a lot of skills that are soft skills, or these are a lot of virtues that you can have. These are not really skills on which you get picked for a particular job. Yes, how you present yourself, how what's your level of confidence when you come across, does play an important role in creating a first impression. But of course, you need something more solid in order to make sure that you get through. So, talking about how really you should upskill yourself, how you should build your engagement on the platform. So, one, you've created an identity. Second is your engagement on the platform, right? So, what do you like? What do you comment? What do you keep sharing on? Start interacting on social media platforms like LinkedIn, right? Reach out to people who are your alumni. Make more connections. Keep liking whatever posts you really identify with. Comment wherever you feel that you have a valid opinion with regards to a particular subject. Share things that you feel are inspirational, that are motivational, that are things that you relate to. What happens is, if I am a recruiter and if you apply to a job that I have posted, and if I am looking at a better cultural fit, I'm naturally going to go to your LinkedIn profile, see who you are as a professional or as a student. What kind of things do you even do on social media platforms? Are you somebody who's not really aware of how to go around the social network, or are you someone who's really mature about how do you go about interacting on these platforms? And that speaks volumes about how professional is your outlook towards an organization. So engagement is the second thing that matters a lot, and third is the intent, right? So on pages like LinkedIn, you have the option to let recruiters that you're privately open to opportunities. So if you have turned that on, you basically made your intent very clear that you're looking out for a job. Okay. Also, the kind of organizations that you're following. Are you following a lot of manufacturing organizations? Are you following a lot of IT product services organizations? Are you following a lot of FMCG organizations? So it also depends what's your preference like. So if I combine your identity, your engagement, and intent, I have a complete picture of who you are as an individual, what really sets you apart, what's your thinking like on the platform, and if you're a culture fit for my organization or not. So that's a basic credential that you need to establish for yourself so that organizations take you seriously whenever you reach out to them, right? Second is upskilling yourself. There are a lot of emerging skills that are coming out where you need to train yourself. And having some skills in your kitty is always going to help you establish yourself better than or over others who are competing for the same skills. Like, for example, if I am an organization that basically is dealing with a very new technology. So Drupal is the new technology that has come to the market, right? And I need people who are capable in this particular technology. Now, if I come to a college where there are 500 students, or say 1,000 students, and I have to pick from them, of course, I'll follow a natural procedure. But if I know that there is somebody who's done this course and who knows at least the basic fundamentals that anyone who has to become a Drupal engineer or a Drupal software developer, that person has those skill sets, you have a natural advantage. You do have a natural advantage, and you are outlining your skills as compared to others, and that's a major advantage for you. So it does matter what you do your upskilling in. There is a way of doing things around it. So I'm in further slides, I'm going to talk about what are these domains that are upcoming, and what are the opportunities that you can see in them. Also, one thing that you can leverage in this time is we've already taken a lot of efforts to build an alumni network, right? So for the college itself, we have an alumni network which is growing. Reach out to your alumni, reach out to people who are in the domain, reach out to recruiters, make them your connections. Try asking them for coffee discussions. Get on a coffee discussion with them. Try to understand what do they do, what is their role like, what does their day look like, right? So this will give you a better idea of what these roles are about. You've just probably heard about these titles, you don't know what is it that they exactly do. Try to understand more about these organizations, try to understand more about these roles. Gives you a clear enough picture of where your interests lie. Do you want to be a solutions consultant? Well, connect with some solution consultants, get on calls with them, try to understand what they're doing. So this will also kind of help you get better prepared. So it's not really that you end up applying haywire to every job that you come across, but then you are more structured in terms of what do you want and how do you want to approach it. So this is what you should be doing for the initial part of your next year. If you are somebody who's entering into your final year, these are the exact steps that you need to be doing, which is building a brand for yourself, focus on upskilling yourself, and build a strong network that you can leverage later on. The second stage of this, which begins in the later half of your year, would be around planning and prioritizing. So basically, here what I mean by that is try to start identifying what kind of organizations do you want to work at, what kind of roles do you want to work for. Even if you don't have a visibility of organizations, that's still fine. As long as you know what are the things that you want to do, it's of utmost importance. Because trust me, if if you end up as a final year student who's basically open to everything, that's a lot of ambiguity. You're just relying on organizations to pick for you as to what you're good at, and that's not really a great area. Because even if you end up getting placed, after a point you're going to start contemplating on what is it that you really want to do. And to be very honest, this is one of the reasons why a lot of engineers also try to shift to an MBA once they've joined in as developers, because they join their jobs, they take up jobs that have been offered to them through placements. And what happens is after a couple of years, they start realizing that, okay, maybe I'm not really cut out for this, or this is not something I see myself doing for the rest of my life. So I might as well start looking at what is it that I really want to do. So you have this time, start looking out for yourselves as to what you really want to do. If you have some organizations in mind, also one thing about organizations, a lot of us are only aware of organizations that come to colleges. So we know the TCS, the Infosys of the world, the Capgemini, Accentures, Syntels, and Atoses of the world. But be open to all other organizations of all cadres that are there. Like, be open to all 8 tier 1 cities that are there in India. You have Mumbai, you have Pune, you have Bangalore, you have Chennai, you have Gurgaon, you have Hyderabad. You have all these cities that are offering jobs. In fact, since I have association with more than 700 organizations in Pune, and let me tell you that Pune is one of the growing hubs of startup ecosystem in this country. I deal with more than 700 organizations that are in this space, and they are constantly hiring. Like, a lot of my friends who left this city because they had got placed with Infosys, they moved to Pune after going to Mysore, and it was very difficult for them to move out of Pune after a point in time, because they just love the life over there. They love the challenges over there. And startups basically mean that you have a lot of responsibilities, and there are immense growth opportunities. You also get paid as per the best industry standards that are set. So do open yourself to a wide range of organizations that deal in variety of domains, as well as that offer variety of services as well as products. So keep yourself open, evaluate all the options that you have. Now, second is in terms of proactive as well as reactive reach outs. So reactive reach out is basically just applying to jobs, and what I usually label it as is just apply and pray. Right? You apply to a particular job and you just pray that somebody reaches out to you. Well, if you want to find a job, that's just not going to suffice. Right? You have to be more proactive in your approach in terms of getting that job or landing that particular opportunity. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you exactly how do you proactively reach out in order to get a job, right? So let me just go back and let me just share another screen with you. Just give me a moment. All right. So team, can you confirm if you can see this? If you can see my LinkedIn page that I've just pulled out?
No,
Okay, give
not
me.
visible yet.
Can you see it now?
No, not really. We're still on the slide.
All right, give me a moment. Let me see what I can do. All right. So here I am. So I think you'll now be able to see this. So this is, I've just logged into my LinkedIn page basically. So how do you go about proactively reaching out to people, right? So let's say I've done my research and I was looking at some organizations that are in Mumbai, that are in Pune, that are in Bangalore, that offer different kind of opportunities. Now, the way you go about proactively reaching out to these organizations is, let's say I identify that there is a company called Docplexes that's basically present in Pune. I was researching through this organization, and I was looking at their operations that are in Mumbai. So they have their operations in Pune as well as in Mumbai. So I can see that this is a growing organization. It's into healthcare tech, and they have about 134 employees on LinkedIn. So let me just see what they've been posting about. They have recently posted about 14 jobs, a total of 16 jobs, and there are 14 more jobs over here. So let's see what kind of roles are they hiring for. Key account manager, business analyst, senior software engineer, associate consultant. All right, let's see what they're hiring for in a senior software engineers. So they're hiring for Java, architecture, iOS, Android, JSON, SDK. All right, understanding of MVC and MVVM architecture. All right, REST API is in JSON. All right, I can see who has posted this job. So there is a Jastinder Kaur Matharu, who is a talent acquisition associate, who has posted this job. So I can just kind of open her profile. Now, before I go to her profile, even let's say I do not see who's posted this job, or let's say you're on your Naukri profile and you see that somebody has posted this job, or you never heard of this organization before. The one thing that you can do is come and search for this organization on LinkedIn. And if you go to their company page, you can just go to their employee section, right? So it basically pulls out all the employees, and you can just type HR in this, and you can see how many of them are HR folks. Right, so I see this particular individual over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to her profile, and of course the one thing that I'm going to do is send her a connection request. Once she accepts, I can send her a message saying, hey Jaswinder, I saw that one of the jobs that's been posted for your organization is blah blah. I am somebody who's looking out for an opportunity in this particular role. Would be great if we could connect to discuss more about how my profile could suit this particular role. So that's how you reach out. So you not just rely on applying for jobs, you reach out to them using LinkedIn InMails. You can also send them emails, and you can also give them calls. Okay, now how to do the latter two is what I'm going to tell you how. So one thing on LinkedIn that's pretty transparent is the activity of people. Okay, so I can just go to the activity section, and I can see that what have they really been talking about, what kind of things have they been posting about. Right. So over here, Mushtaba Faki, scientific editor at Docplexes. Is scientific writing your forte? Are you a stickler for accuracy? If yes, we are hiring a scientific editor. You see, I just got her email address from here. Right? It was that easy. I got her email address from here. Let's say that her email address is still not available. Now, what happens is when talent acquisition professionals, when they're posting for jobs, one thing that they really want to have is a lot of applications, right? So they have to also make themselves available. When they post jobs on job portals, they know that people are going to come in and apply. So your contact details are going to be there with them. But on LinkedIn as well, LinkedIn is also one of the hiring channels. So what a lot of TA professionals do is they write posts on LinkedIn, right? So I can just go to a post and see what all Jastinder has been posting about. Has she been talking about some positions? And if they are talking about some positions, there will always be a call to action, right? There will be some way in which they will say that, okay, if you're interested, reach out to me on this number, or reach out to me, or drop your resumes on this particular email address. So it's very likely that they do that. So this is where you'll find their email addresses. So now what you can do is, whatever profile that you've created, whatever resume that you've created, you can send them an exact email with the exact content that I told you about, right? And once you send them an email, you can start reaching out to them, right? So how do you reach out to them, right? So let's say I go to Docplexes. All right, I see on the website home about us section. What interests me is the career section. So working at Docplexes, okay, medical communications, blah blah blah. I go down, I find a number, right? So I already have a number, I already have an email address. Now this is what is more important, and this is for you to know that it will matter how you sell yourself. Everything that you do in your corporate culture will be all about selling your skill sets, selling your candidature. That's how the job process works. Because not just an HR person's job is to sell you a profile in the organization at a particular package. So for them, it's as good as a sales process. But even for you as a candidate, it's going to be a sales process. It's how you sell your candidature to them, it's how you sell your skill sets to them. How do you say that how you should be selected over others who are competing for the same job? And that's where you have to establish credibility for yourself. That's how you exactly have to sell yourself. So if you ask sales professionals how do they go about getting more revenue, this is how they do it. They identify what is their target audience. That's the first step. You identified who your target audience is when you're finding a job, which is HR professionals, which is talent acquisition professionals. You find out their contact details. I just showed you exactly how to do that using LinkedIn, using their website. Even if her contact details are not really over here, you will always have borderline numbers of organizations. You can give them a call. You can ask them to connect you to HR professionals. What do your placement committees in your college do? Right? They basically reach out to people on emails. They reach out to people on emails. A lot of them also do calls basis whatever contacts you have. This is what you need to start doing for yourself. Right? Stop having your dependency on others. Start creating that dependency for yourself. Now, what do you even talk about to them on your phone? So typically, if I'm a final year student, a conversation with a recruiter is going to be something like this. Hey, hi, my name is Adhish Rane. I'm a student. I'm a final year student in St. Francis Institute of Technology. I'm pursuing my bachelor's degree in electronics and telecommunication. I saw that one of the postings on your LinkedIn company page was around senior software engineer. I saw that you're hiring for these particular skill sets, and I do feel that I would be a good fit for this. So I just thought of giving you a call to make your acquaintance and also trying to understand more about the roles and responsibilities around this role. Do you think this would be a good time for that? Right. So this pretty much sounded like the stuff that you might have heard on Wolf of Wall Street. Yes, it is pretty salesy, but yes, this is how you'll stand out. Because what will happen is if I am a talent acquisition consultant, I have 300 applicants minimum that come to a particular job. The first thing that I'm going to do is screen out people through their years of experience. The more years of experience is more desirable for my particular role. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start filtering out by years of experience, and you'll just go out of that stack. So if you are somebody who does not have an experience and you want to stand out, these are the things that you need to do. These are the things that I did. And this is how it landed me my first job at Zycus. So that was an organization that basically rejected me 5 times before they offered me an internship. And that was because I was persistently following up with them. And that's what you guys exactly need to do. So that's what I basically wanted to tell you about how you can proactively reach out. Now, going back, let me just stop sharing my screen over here. Let me just go back to the presentation. All right. Yeah. So yes, we've covered how to go about planning and prioritizing accounts. One more thing that you can do is you can start searching for organizations that are based in a particular city. You can see organizations that are headquartered in Mumbai. You can look at organizations that are headquartered in Pune or other cities as well. Or the one thing that you can do is you can just search for HR professionals in your LinkedIn search column. You can just search for HR roles in people, HR roles in jobs. So always go for HR in people. And if you want to make it more refined, search for talent acquisition professionals. You will find a list of people. You will find hundreds of pages of them. So open them in new tabs, start reaching out to them. What will probably make your efforts even more effective is create an Excel sheet for yourself. Have one column that specifically is the companies that you want to reach out to. Second is the HRs that you found from those organizations. Third is whenever you find an email address or a contact number, mention those details over there, right? So that it's also easier for you to keep a track of what you're doing or what are your activities. Now, if you don't want to do even that, if you feel that, okay, this is not really me, this is not how I want to reach out, you've already built a network in Sem 7, right? That was the exact thing that I asked you to do in your semester 7. So what you can do right now is start leveraging those referrals, right? a lot of organizations have 70% of hiring that happens through referrals. So for LinkedIn, for example, if they have hired me because they saw me as a great culture fit, tomorrow if I have somebody who I want to recommend to LinkedIn, they're going to take it seriously because they do know that if I am recommending somebody, I do know that there are certain requirements to be a part of this organization in terms of a culture fit. So alumni that you're talking to, recruiters that you're talking to, people from your college, your industry peers, connections that you've made, leverage them. Ask for those referrals. Ask to get referred to specific roles within an organization. Follow up with them, follow rigorously up with them. And this is how you will exactly end up getting a placement. Whether it happens towards the end of your final year, whether it happens after that, this is the process that will sure short set you up for success. There's absolutely no qualms about this. This is how talent acquisition professionals function. This is how sales professionals function. And people who get a lot more offers than your regular candidates, this is what they do different. They're very persistent in their approaches. So that's something that you should be doing. This is what I wanted to tell you from a job seeking perspective. Now, towards the end, I want to talk about what are the emerging skill sets in this particular landscape. What are the different domains that are coming up? So some of the emerging domains are around compliance, which is basically data risk management, data compliance. So a lot of roles are coming around on that front. Social media marketing is seeing a lot of upwards trend because you have a lot of social media channels, be it LinkedIn, be it Facebook, be it Instagram, that allow you to run different sort of promotions, different sort of ad campaigns. So there are a lot of roles around this. A lot of digital systems, a lot of products and services require continuous integration, especially if you have multiple systems. So integration is a role that's coming up, and majorly it has a lot of job opportunities around DevOps and full stack roles. Apart from that, workflow automation, gesture recognition technology, which is majorly from your laptops, your mobile phones, and other avenues that you can basically move into that. So from an electrical as well as an IT engineering perspective, as well as electronics engineering perspective, these are fields that you can look at. Blockchain is something that's developing a lot. A lot of organizations are taking this more seriously now. There was earlier only just to talk about it. But yeah, even the same case with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotic process automation. RPA is now prevalent in the market. There are a lot of bots that are already available that kind of ease your job, that kind of pull out reports whenever you want them. The same is with artificial intelligence and machine learning. Even on LinkedIn, we've kind of inculcated a lot of AI and machine learning practices within our tools. So we see this domain really flourishing in the coming months as well as in the coming years. So these are some of the emerging domains where you could see if any of your future avenues lie within this. You can start pursuing these. Now, from an emerging IT skills and roles perspective, on your left-hand side, you can see some of the skill sets that we've seen. So these skills are basically LinkedIn skills that we see professionals as having. So you can see on your left-hand side the skills that are mentioned over here. In the past 1 year, what has been the growth in these skills? As to how many professionals, what's the increase in the number of professionals who have this skill? So from last 1 year, there's been a 17% rise in the number of professionals who have analytical skills as a skill set. Total number of professionals is 5,81,366.
Adish, sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt. Could you please full screen the presentation? A few users cannot actually, it's not completely visible to the people who are using Android.
Oh, sorry. Thanks for pointing that out. Let me just go to the slide. Yes.
Thank you.
So you have skills on the left-hand side. So let me just go through some of the skill sets. As analytical skills, CSS, Scrum. Scrum is basically your agile Scrum. Engineering, okay. Engineering doesn't really make a difference over here because it's not really a skill set. Customer satisfaction, C, Android, Python, Git, Jira, AngularJS. AngularJS has a lot of roles in both Mumbai as well as Pune. So that's something that's growing, even in Ahmedabad for that matter. Information technology, again, that's a bit generic. Data analysis, digital marketing. I have some more skills that I've loaded on the next page, so I'll be taking you through that. But let's focus on some of the IT skills and roles, IT roles that we've been frequently encountering on LinkedIn. So AI specialist, robotics engineer, data scientist, full stack engineer roles, site reliability engineer, front end web developer, DevOps engineer, back end developer, cloud engineer, JavaScript developer, cybersecurity specialist, business analyst. Sales development rep is one role that we see is improving tremendously, and that's a bit of a surprise for IT organizations. But even data engineers and software testers. So usually, a lot of us only know about roles that are around development and testing. We don't really know much about the details of these exact nature of titles, or what are these roles all about. So these are some of the titles that I wanted to showcase to you guys, just in case you want to search by these titles and you want to research more about these titles. Look at people who are, say, AI specialists or robotic engineers, connect with them and try to understand what is their role all about, right? So that's something that this will help you in. And also, I wanted to showcase to you some other skill sets that are also prevalent in the same space. So in addition to that, would be C++. Salesforce is a growing skill set. A lot of Salesforce implementation partners out there. C Hash, Linux, jQuery, HTML, .NET, SQL, Adobe Photoshop, PHP, MySQL. There's some of the skills that are upcoming in the market. There are a lot of professionals around this, and that's basically what I wanted to showcase with you. Now, what I'm going to do is, in the interest of time, I'm going to conclude this presentation over here. I'm going to stop sharing this. Of course, I'll be sharing this presentation with the ITSA team so that they can probably reach out to you with this. So that you can leverage this presentation deck. But I'll be open to more questions around this, just to address, what kind of questions you guys have been having. I'm sure there is a lot of information I can share in those.
So we can actually technically start with the Q&A. In case there are any questions, feel free to all the participants. Please feel free to mention them in the message box. So Adhish, the first question was by Almas. If I fit the skill set for a particular job, but don't have the required experience, should I still give it a try by applying?
Yes. You should definitely give it a try if you have a particular skill set. Like, let's say, for example, let's say that you have, say, SQL, like SQL developer or a ASP.NET developer as a profile, and you do not have the necessary experience being a student. Let's assume that you're a student. You have done some courses around this, so you know what is required of that particular role. What is that particular programming language all about? The reason why you should apply is that you have the necessary skill sets. Even if you don't have work experience, a lot of organizations, once they hire people, they do make you undergo a rigorous training program. So it's not like you're going to join an organization and you're just going to be directly onto the floor and working. Right? That's not really going to happen. So in a lot of cases, they look at your competencies, they look how skilled you are, what's really your intent like, how do you really stand out of the crowd in terms of other aspects and not just the technical aspects. And that's where it is important that you also keep on applying to these roles. So this is where it can help you. Do give it a shot to apply for roles, not really considering that there may be some other people who may be having more experience than you. That does not discourage you and should not discourage you from applying.
Cool. I believe that was a great answer. Another question is, what is the scenario for ME and MS abroad, like post the pandemic situation, and how do we go about applying?
Sure. So we've not really heard from a lot of universities with regards to their admission programs, because they themselves have not really been able to visit the universities and have a structure in place around their admission process. What we do here as of now is what I basically mentioned at the start, that the process of applications could be delayed a bit. Universities could resume their regular schedule later on, and not as per their scheduled timing of commencement of these schedules. So that's one. A lot more universities are willing to offer financial aids in order to boost admissions. A lot of them could begin virtual classrooms, even if you get, even if you join a particular university. But we see that students are not really willing to take risks. In fact, one of my personal connections, she had left a job that she was already working for, and she was basically applying for admits. But now, because it's all a bit of a quandary, so she started looking out for jobs again. So it's not really the most advisable time to look at any post graduation that's outside, but there is nothing to discourage you as well. You will probably have to look towards having some sort of a communication from the universities to know more about what should be the next steps.
at the same time, like when the economy is crashing, would it be a wiser decision to opt for higher studies or to go for a job?
Okay, that's a very good question. So even if you go for higher studies, so let's assume the different avenues. One, you have MBAs, you have MTechs, you have MS. It is very important for you to know what exactly do you want from these courses, right? A lot of times I've seen students doing this, uh, and my batch itself is a huge testament to this particular situation, that a lot of us do it because we're not really aware of what's the next step like, right? A lot of my friends, when I spoke to them, a lot of them did that because of fear of losing of opportunities, fear of being left behind. There's not a lot of clarity when it comes to why do you exactly want to do it. Are you doing it because other people are doing it? Be very specific in terms of asking yourself, why do you really want to do a post graduation? Because at the end of 2 years, if you're not really getting, if your aim of doing a post graduation was to get a better salary, then what will happen if you don't end up with that? So start thinking on those lines. What do you really want out of a post graduation? If you're doing an MBA, why do you want to do an MBA? What what uh, what skills are you expecting out of a particular course or a curriculum that you're doing, so that in the end, if you don't even end up with, say, a job, do you still think that you will end up getting what you want? If you have an answer to that, then I would recommend that you go doing for an MBA or an MS or an MTech, right? So that would be my suggestion. uh, Otherwise, I would say that it's a safer option. You have another year. You can still look for job opportunities first, get yourself secure, and once the time is right, once the situation kind of subsides, then look at what's going to be your next step. Because at no point of time will a work experience prove to be a harm to you. A work experience will always keep on just adding to your resume, and that's something as an experience that you can just keep on leveraging. So that's one thing that I genuinely feel is the case.
Yeah. So now during the pandemic situation, like many students are doing certifications. Like, so overall, which certifications are really valued by recruiters? Like, is it worth spending on websites like Udemy, Pluralsight, just for the certificates? Or, I mean, at the same time, you can also get the skills from other sources. So, is it really worth to get the certification, or would the skill set matter more?
So if you have certifications, so see, there is not a lot of value to certifications if you're not able to justify it. To be very honest, like I did a couple of courses on, say, introduction to marketing, and when I was a student, I thought that's a great deal because there was Wharton Business School, University of Pennsylvania, introduction to marketing course. Oh, I'm going to talk about this. Oh, this is going to open myself up for marketing kind of roles. It does not happen that way. So whatever skill sets you learn, it's very important for you to understand that how uh, are you able to do justice to these skills in interviews? Is it something that you can reproduce as a skill set when you're giving interviews, or is it something that's really applicable? So if I ask you that, okay, if you've done a particular course, prove how it has benefited you, tell me what you know about this domain. Are you in a position to answer those questions? If you are, yes, that's a skill set. Then that's something that you should do. So either you have this mentality when you're approaching a particular skill set, that you first be very sure of what you're going to do and why do you want to do it. So let's say I found this particular job. I looked at all these roles that I've listed, right? I saw that, okay, front end web developer is a role that sounds lucrative to me. So what are the skills? I went through the doc Texas job posting, right? I saw some object oriented programming languages that are listed over there. So I want a role like this. So let me do skills as in that. So when I'm doing that, I have a particular mindset that I want these. I want to know what this is all about. So once I know this, it's good for me to reproduce these skills in an interview. I'm able to prove my knowledge in these. If I can do that, well and good. But if you're just doing it theoretically and you won't be able to provide that, then it's just going to be a waste of time. You just have a certificate that shows that you've done courses, but that wouldn't mean anything, right? That's just how it works.
So, like, even at the same time, say for example, students have done their certifications across multiple sources. So would the brand of the certificate provider, say whether it's Coursera or whether it's LinkedIn, would it matter?
No, not really, not really.
Not at all.
So the difference in these online learning platforms is that they have different methods. Okay, so for example, Udemy offers their own certificates. Coursera has affiliation with a lot of universities, so there are a lot of huge names of US universities that you see, which also kind of makes it lucrative. Uh, what happens with the likes of Coursera is their professors basically give you the entire course guidelines, right? They are the ones who are your instructors. What happens with them is these certificates do not really have as much value as the university certificate itself has. So these certificates are offered to you by Coursera. It's just that they are in affiliation with that college. And that does not necessarily mean that just because there is a name of that college, it adds a certain weightage to it. So it does not mean that. So even if you have a simple certificate that says that, okay, you've done this particular course, it depends on how you can reproduce it. Like I acted smart in one of my interviews and I talked about this very marketing thing. And when questions started coming left, right, and center, I knew that instead of having something that I partially know about, it's better to talk about something that I absolutely know something about. And whether you do a certification at the end of the day, if you can't talk about it, it's not going to help you, period. Like if you've done, say, in your first year, you've probably learned applied physics and applied chemistry. So does that qualify you to apply to a chemical engineer position? Not really, right? So can you really apply those concepts over here? Not really. You cannot prove your expertise over here. But if you do something like something of a course or something of a specialization in it, and you're open to talk about it, you have required knowledge for it to prove, then it makes sense. Then it does make sense for you to give it a shot.
So then, would projects justify the certificates that you earn?
Would projects justify the certificates? Okay, could you give me an example of this?
Like, say, for example, a student does a course on a particular given subject, maybe it's AI, and then after that, he or she also takes up a project on the same. Would it justify to the recruiter?
Yeah, it would. It would. It's definitely so. It basically shows that you know what is it that you exactly want to do. That itself is a very rare thing because not everybody knows what they want to do. So if you have a particular skill set that you've built in a particular field, you're willing to take up projects, you're willing to experiment with that skill set. It shows that you have a specific intent, and that basically makes it look to a recruiter that you are somebody who really wants to invest yourself in this particular field. So that's something that will play to your advantage.
So this is another question which we've obviously asked you before as well. Like there'll be students who would like to shift towards management or marketing, towards the non-technical aspect of jobs. So like the students have a question as to like what skill sets do we actually require for non-technical jobs, because we come from an engineering background, we may not have all the knowledge, and what exactly should we be doing as a person?
So I tell you that start trying to understand what these roles are, right? There's a lot of confusion when people say marketing, because a lot of people think that marketing is the same as sales or is the same as business development, or marketing is just all about running campaigns, so on and so forth. So it's not that way. Sales is different. Sales is client facing sales role. Customer success is different. Relationship management is different. Sales development is different. In marketing, your customer relationship management, your CRM leads generation is different. Website design is different. If you want to run brand campaigns, campaign manager access, that's different. So start by trying to understand more about these domains. If you're somebody who wants to look at marketing, start trying to understand what are the different areas of marketing, right? Because marketing is a huge field. So is it B2C marketing? Is it B2B marketing? Once you start going through this, see what will happen. And I'm glad you brought this up, because even when you do a lot of courses, what will basically happen is, one, you will understand what is it that you really want to do. Even if you don't understand what is it that you really want to do, one thing that will definitely happen is you will know what you don't want to do. And that's a very underrated value. That's a very underrated aspect. Like I did this course in finance, and I knew right away that finance is just not meant for me. It's not my cup of tea. So I have skipped that completely, and I started looking at other courses that I can do. And then I started looking down at what were my options. Now, when I was an engineer and I got into this kind of a role, I started off with the marketing internship, right? I did not have any sort of skill sets. So do you know how I got a job? I was the chairperson of the IET when I was in SFIT, right? So I used to do a lot of presentations to get membership registrations, so on and so forth. So I used to love going to classrooms and give presentations around this. I wasn't really keen on a developer or a tester kind of role. So I was very sure from that experience that I really wanted to do something that was more around that it was more around giving presentations or talking to people or selling something. And I gave interview 5 times and I guess for all sorts of technical positions, and I was rejected for all of them. And then the fifth time they gave me a call and they said that we didn't really select you for the technical positions because you didn't really have an expertise in them. Like we required an HTML developer, you didn't know HTML. You just knew it until 12th standard, but you didn't really have skills that could be applied. But we did see that your business communications were something of an acceptable level. So we think that we want to offer you this internship, and that's how I basically started off. So even if you have a bit of an inkling in terms of where your skill sets lie or what are you really even good at, then you can start exploring avenues, do your research, and then start trying to apply for those roles. It's something that worked out for me. It's something that's worked out for a lot of my colleagues and people who've been a part of our college. And that's how you can progress in this particular. And again, as I said, you can connect with a lot of people. You have social media. That's the biggest asset that you have. Connect to people who people who are alumni, people who you can see. Reach out to them, try to understand what's their roles like, have discussions with them to give you better clarity. There's nothing like talking to a person who's actually in that role that gives you a better idea of what you want to do.
So one more thing, as you mentioned, like when companies look to hire, they don't really want to wait for a longer period of time. Now, usually placements start by July. So for the upcoming batch, which is in third year right now, they'll be in the fourth year next year. Okay. So what time, like what approach would be right? What time would be right to really go and approach the HR or say even to try by yourself for placements?
So if you want to start approaching from Sem 7, I would suggest that go after the mass recruiting organizations, because if you typically see, when placement season start, the TCS, Infosys, Capgeminis of the world immediately flock to your colleges. Now, why do they do that? Is they always want the cream crowd. Now, these organizations are organizations that have a lot of revenue. So they know that every year on year, some talent is going to be lost. So there will naturally be some people who will be stepping into those positions. So it follows a very recycling sort of a process, right? And also a lot of them have a concept of bench strength. It's very IT services kind of a jargon, which is developing a bench strength. So even if people who were on bench last year, now they have progressed into roles, you will still have a lot more people coming in on bench or people who will directly enter into some projects. So these have that kind of resources. These organizations have those kind of positions where they can still recruit on a mass level. So it is important time for you to start reaching out to these organizations, because even if you apply in SEM 7, they are the organizations that will wait for you until SEM 8, until you're done with your final year, right? Because they know that they still have enough resources. And once you join, they still have about a year's time to make vacancies for you. But let's say you reach out to something that's a very small business, as just a startup. Now, in a startup, there is a lot less number of people. So everyone has their responsibilities cut out. So if I have a role for, say, a software developer, I need a software developer. I need it immediately because there is some dependability on it. I don't really have a bench strength if I am a startup, right? So if I need a person, I need it ASAP. Max that I can wait is, say, typical notice period, like 2 to 3 months. So I'm willing to wait for that long. But if you're saying that you're going to apply for this position, you're going to join after a year or after, say, 7 to 8 months, I might not wait. The ship might have already sailed away. I might as well find other people who can immediately join. So that dependability is lesser in bigger organizations, in large scale enterprises or enterprises. Whereas for startups, it's more of approaching them when you're willing to go out there and get a job.
Okay. So another thing was like about the business analyst role. Like usually we see in companies, like whenever they hire, they usually look for 5 years of experience or a larger chunk of experience. They wouldn't really go for a fresher. So what exactly would be the skills, to even apply for the job before you go there?
So if you do some courses on basics of business analysis, it kind of helps. Now, in some cases, you may not even require a skill set. Like for example, my previous organization, Zycus, they used to hire a lot of business analysts, and they used to hire freshers from colleges. They still do hire freshers from colleges. Of course, they don't really have a lot of skill sets. These are skill sets that I basically trained, because a business analyst is a role that's basically around requirement gathering. So when you have Once you have a customer that basically signs up for you, you have to do a requirement gathering of that particular customer so that then you can instruct your team of developers and testers to go ahead and start making configurations or customizations for that particular customer. So business analyst is more a job that you learn on the go, right? So you can look at organizations that are more smaller scale in nature so that you can have a better chance at having a crack of getting just into the role firstly. Once you have at least about a year or two worth of experience, then you can look at switching to organizations that are way higher. See, it's not going to happen that, let's say you've just step out of college and you're applying for a role that requires 10 years of experience, and you're just going to say that I've done, these skill sets or done these certifications, so I'm fit for that role. It's not really going to happen, but you need to start somewhere, right? So maybe in that sweet spot where organizations require people from 1 to 3 years of experience, because that's not really that much amount of experience, you can contest for these roles, right? You can compete with talent that's available for these roles. So that is what you should be looking at targeting. Of course, doing some skills for business analyst roles comes in handy. If you know some programming languages, also it comes in handy. Like for example, if I'm working on an IT project that basically has Java at the backend, for example, if I know any particular programming languages, if I know that particular platform, like even if it's say a Microsoft platform, I know that I know one of the persons who has asked the question in the chat. I know him personally. I know he's been working on say a Microsoft platform per se. So if you have a knowledge of that particular platform, it does play to your advantage if you can talk about it. Because then when you are collecting requirements from a business analyst perspective, you're very much sure of what's the communication that goes to your developers. You're able to communicate in a better manner, so it plays to your advantage. So having a bit of programming experience, having a lot of platform experience does play a good role in that.
Okay, there's just another question from Ankit Dekate. He asks whether, because of this pandemic, will there be a decrease on the placements or will it remain the same?
So at least in the initial half, we do see that placements might get affected because a lot of organizations will kind of have a wait and watch scenario that they will be in. So when they don't really have a lot of clarity on their existing employees, so they don't know if they are laying off people or not. So there doesn't arise a lot of question of welcoming a lot more new employees on board. So uh, I see a lot of organizations being more cautious. So there could be a drop in placements, at least in the initial part of the season. But towards the later half of the placement season, I see organizations bucking up because I do see organizations will scramble for resuming normalcy because they will start moving towards an existential threat, and they would want to keep getting more and more projects. And as they start keep getting more and more projects, they will look at hiring more and more people. So I do think that will go up, but what will happen is you will also end up competing with a lot more professionals and a lot more people who have been jobless than you would have before. So that's the only concern over here.
Okay. So, say per se, a student would like to get into the field of HR, perhaps. So, how would he, like, if he has an engineering background? So, if he wants to get into HR or even say sales, how should he go to it, other than the option of taking a MBA?
Well, if you want to start off in a field that's completely related to what you're doing or the specialization that you've done in, I reckon that you start off with uh, small scale organizations like startups. The opportunities are immense. I know I've been working with a Pune based organization called ACOP Systems, and they have been hiring recruiters as engineers. So they've been hiring engineers for recruiters. So they've been hiring a lot of engineers because engineers do have a set of analytical abilities, analytical skill sets, problem solving abilities that kind of differentiate them from the crowd. There is a sound level of logic that they can apply to certain processes, and engineers are basically very process oriented people that kind of help them in pursuing a particular enterprise of whether be it talent acquisition, be it HR operations, processing salaries, for example, or learning and development for that matter. So it does play to your advantage. It's okay if you don't really have an MBA. So those organizations that look for an MBA are majorly the bigger organizations that like for example the Dells of the world, right? So like let's say I am a salesperson. I was in Zycus. I was applying to all sort of organizations. I saw that Dell was requiring around 10 years of experience with an MBA. So they usually have these sort of degrees that they put up or years of experience that they put up because they want to filter people more and more, right? They already get a lot of applications because these are huge organizations we are talking about. Everyone wants to work with them. So they have to find some or the other way of filtering down their audience. It's just like how your aptitude tests work in placements, right? You have different levels of your placement rounds because organizations they cannot hire 1,000 people at the same time. They need to filter down to see how many people are really capable and how many people you can really onboard. So that's basically a criteria for them. But if you want to get into a role, you can start off by applying in small scale roles. Then once you get a good 1 year, 2 years worth of experience, if you feel that you want to switch and then start having a crack at bigger organizations, then you can do that.
Okay. So usually placements start by July every year, but in this case, we know what the scenario is. So do you have any insights as to when the placement phase will start for the 2020-21 batch?
So I do see that some organizations that have already committed to placement season, to being there because it's sort of a booking that they do. Because a lot of organizations, like the top tier organizations, they compete with each other for the first day, the 0 day of placement process. So I think some of the organizations will live up to their commitments. A lot of them will come in starting July when your semesters resume. That's if your semesters resume in a normal way. Then we'll see a lot of organizations coming in. But apart from that, I see that not a lot of educational institutions might resume, not a lot of them at least, by September or October. And organizations that will come for placements, they do need to have an interface with students, right? They do need to have a face-to-face interview with students. That interface will not be there. So I do feel placements are going to be pushed a bit. There might be those one or two odd companies that might come in at the beginning, but I see most of them coming towards the later half of the first semester as well as second semester.
Okay. So there was one more question, like when you said there'll be a drop in the placement pattern. So the question arises that wouldn't doing a master's degree and getting an extra degree in hand be a better option, you know? Because some have the perception that it would obviously be a struggle to get a job amidst the pandemic as well. So going for further education wouldn't be a better option when you seek to plan out.
Okay. See, it completely depends on what the situation like. It's very difficult to predict what is going to happen. So, is the economy going to recover in the next 1 year? We don't know. Is this situation going to recover in the next 6 months? We don't know. Right? Will getting a job be easier than going for your post graduation? No. Yeah, it's easier to go for a post graduation, right? Just to go ahead and do your masters. What will happen at the end of it, after the end of 2 years, after you do your masters, is not something that we can predict right now. But what's in your hand is to get is because we are addressing the placement side of things is why I'm saying that it's better to approach a placement. Now, if you assume that at the end of post graduation you still have a better chance of getting a job, that's not the case. That's really not the case. Because I know that a lot of students are under this assumption. A lot of us even go do, say, for example, an MBA or an MS. MS is a very different ballgame altogether. But I'll talk about the Indian side of things, which is an MTech and an MBA. If you want to do an MTech, yeah, this is a good time for you to do that, because you do know that an MTech, you will be basically having a specialization in the skill sets in which you've already done your bachelor's in. So you know really what you want to get out of that particular postgraduate program. So if you are planning on doing an MTech and following it up by either joining a job or being a professor or taking up a doctoral degree, then yeah, I would encourage you to do that. But if you're doing something like an MBA, a lot of mentality that comes behind going for an MBA is that, "Arey, hum MBA karenge, there will be some boost to our basic pay package," right? That's a lot of myth that people have, that our pay packages will start from 10 lakhs per annum, 11 lakhs per annum. That's not really the case. It's true for some cases, because of, like, a lot of MBA colleges talk about the highest offer that they have, right? But I do know people from my batch who've done their masters in business administration. It did not really pay the dividends, because what happens is you will be paying 2 years worth of fees. You will take another 2 years at least to recover the fee that you've paid, especially if you are on loan, right? So for the next 4 years at least, the net revenue that you've basically earned is not really that much. And if you don't really end up with the kind of job that you're expecting to end up with, then it's again a worst case scenario. And I will ask you to assume a worst case scenario in this particular picture, right? What basically improves your chances of landing up a better job is even if you have work experience, right? If you have a work experience, it gives you better knowledge of what you want to do an MBA in, even if you want to do an MBA. If you want to do an MS, I have a lot of friends who have taken experience, who know what they want from an MS, and then they've gone to do an MS. So then they are very much in control of, or they have a complete understanding of why they want to do it, what do they want to get out of it, and then it becomes very easy for them to really go after the job titles or the roles that they really want to approach. So you will have much more understanding. That's one, which is why I would suggest that you take up a job opportunity. But it's completely up to you. It's not that I discourage the other and encourage taking a job opportunity, but in my experience, having looked at all people from my batches before me, batches after me, just working for a while gives you enough amount of experience to know how organizations function. So even if I enter a developer role, I can look at an organization, different roles within an organization. Maybe finance could be of interest to me. Maybe marketing could be of interest to me. Maybe operations could be of interest to me. Maybe product design, UI, UX design could be of interest to me. You get a chance to see all these wheels in tandem working while you're working, right? So it gives you enough food for thought as to gives you a lot of timeline as well to plan your next steps. So as a student, you will not really have that much amount of visibility, which is why I would recommend that you follow that procedure. But of course, if you want to do that, if you want to still pursue your masters, it's not really a bad thing to do. In this situation, however, there is a lot of speculations about how universities are responding. So until and unless we hear from universities on how are they continuing with their admission process, I would just kind of advise you to stay put and look for further notifications.
Okay. So another question is that like around, if we look around, everyone is doing some of the other certifications. All right. So if in case it's like everybody has such certifications, it won't be like it would be a standout feature of your CV or of your resume, would it? Because if everyone is doing, so how do you really stand out if not for your certifications or projects?
See, when you evaluate two people at the same time and they have very like the same skill set that you're basically seeing, the first thing that you do is you try to understand what is the expertise that one has over the other in that very subject itself. Like let's say you've done an SQL course, Lenin, and there are say 10, 15 other people who've done the same course. Your ability to reproduce the knowledge that you've learned from that particular course is not going to be the same, right? So what is your knowledge, what you've learned throughout your engineering days, the projects that you've done, and on top of that, the skill sets where you've basically done a particular course, how you reproduce that particular course and your knowledge of that course will basically depend from person to person. It depends a lot on your soft skills. It depends a lot on your experience, how you articulate it, how you are able to apply it to different project-based scenarios, or how you're able to apply it in an interview. Those capabilities are going to be very different. So you'll also be judged basis those skill sets. And this is where things like soft skills come into the picture as well. So it's not necessarily that they will come into the picture, but also what other skills you have, be it from a technical perspective. And then it will come down to what kind of soft skills do you have. So it depends on the kind of roles that you're applying for. It depends on the recruiter who's basically evaluating you. But it's not really going to be that two people with the same skill sets are going to be the same. It won't really happen.
Thank you. I believe that is the end of a Q&A session. We haven't seen any questions being posted for the last 5 minutes. But there's one personal thing which I would like to ask you. Would you like to offer any piece of advice to the students who aren't really sure as to what their best skill set is, or what their best step they should put forward to when it comes to their career choices or when it comes to their specialization, and they could be in the third year or in the fourth year. So what advice would you give to them?
Right. So for people who are in the third year, fourth year, who are not really sure of what do they exactly want to do, what I would advise, and I wish somebody had told me this before, that always reach out for help. Ask people who are doing what they're doing. Try to understand what these things are all about, because obviously you've You've had one particular focus, which is on your bachelor's degree, right? You've not been open to what the market is like. There's immense opportunities. There are a lot of product organizations, service organizations offering variety of services. It's very difficult for you to know that this is what you want to do. And a lot of times it's okay to not know what you really want to do. But how do you start is start trying to understand all of these domains. Just try to research, just try to go through some articles, try connecting with your peers. You have an alumni network that you can leverage. We did not even have that because there was no such a platform that was that active, or even if there was, we didn't really know about it, right? Reach out to people. If you want, reach out to me. Let's have a conversation around this. Feel free to reach out to any of your networks, your peer connections, and absolutely each and every single one of us will be willing to help out, right? So know things about these things as to what are the different roles that are available in the market. Then try to understand that if you want to get into this role or not, try to understand what are these roles like, what is their daily what is their day like, right? What skills do you require for this particular role? Then start building yourself that, okay, if I want this particular role, maybe it wouldn't harm if I do a particular skill set, right? Because even if you do a skill set, even if you don't land that particular role, you still have an additional skill set, right? So maybe the next role that you're looking at is where you'll benefit it. Because we also, when we hire people, we also look at what are the efforts that they took from a learning perspective besides their bachelor degrees or beside their job roles. How did you invest in yourself? You have to invest in yourself. That's how you'll improve. If you just wait that, okay, I've done my bachelor's, some organization is going to come, some organization is going to offer me a role, I'm just going to do that job, and then when I'm tired, I'll look at another. No, it doesn't work like that. You will grow as a professional, you'll grow as an individual, and that will happen when you keep opening up yourself for different learning opportunities, right? So keep yourself open to all these things. Even if you're confused at any point of time, do your research. Don't take hasty decisions without having a complete knowledge of why is it that you're doing what you're doing. Like I gave you an example of MBA or an MS. Know why you're doing a particular course. Don't do it because others are not doing it. Another piece of advice that I'll give is, yes, if you are not really sure that why you want to do something, don't do it. Because if the consequences are not as you expected it to be, you will not really be in a space where you will mentally accept it. Like a lot of people do things because others do it. It's not necessarily that you have to be that way, right? Always a high salary package is not an indication of your success. I have seen people who have not ended up with jobs towards the end of their final years. They've still gone on and they have achieved success in terms of being really satisfied with what they're doing. They really love what they're doing. And once that happens, you'll also end up earning the money, the kind of money that you want. So don't really focus on these superficial aspects. Don't focus on the materialistic aspects. Try to understand what is it that you really want to do, right? Enjoy what you're really doing. And one last piece of advice that I'll give is, see, throughout this placement scenarios, and this has been my personal experience, when the placement scenario, when the placement season progresses, and our first couple of companies come in, we always have these expectations, like we are the heroes of our stories, right? We do expect that stellar company is going to come in and we are going to get placed in this company. You always picture yourself in those particular situations, but when that does not happen, it sets you back, right? And as the season keeps on progressing, you start having those lack of confidence. The pressure kind of builds on. You do realize that you are on a very shorter timeline. There's a lot at stake, and when things start going on stake, it also affects how you perform in these situations. So don't take any sort of pressure on this. It's very easier, given the kind of unprecedented situations that we are in, to be very worried about things, to be under enormous pressure, be it to get placed or anything else. Be confident, ask for help, whether it's from your colleagues, whether it's from your faculty. We have one of the best faculty members in the entire circuit of Mumbai University. Reach out to your professors, talk to them. What are your other opportunities? You have a lot of faculty that are experienced. Reach out to them. Reach out to me. Reach out to your alumni. Talk about these things. Don't take a lot of pressure onto yourself. It's okay to fail, because even if you do, what's going to happen is you're going to learn at the end of it. You might think that this is just something that I'm just saying for the heck of it. Trust me, I've experienced it. Like the previous organization that I worked for, they've rejected me 5 times. Imagine every single time that I was rejected, I've had to go back home. And that journey back home is the longest one that you can have, right? I still ended up in that organization, even at LinkedIn for that matter. I was rejected by LinkedIn in 2016. right, before they went on and offered me a role in 2019. So you may not look at rejections the very same way, when they come across, because at that point of time, you're a very different sort of a mindset. But keep at it. Don't lose hope. Keep trying for that job. As I said, follow the guidelines that I've given you. Reach out to me if you have any queries at any given point of time, and I will be willing to help you. But just be sure that you're really focused on this. And unlike what we did when we were students, we are not really sure about what we were doing. This is one thing for you to learn, because the margin of error is a bit slight in your case. So be very confident about what you're doing and leverage all the resources that you can. So that will be one last message that I want to have. I have already extended this by an enormous amount of time. So really sorry for that. I really appreciate you guys sticking back. I do hope I was able to do justice to your time. If there is anything that you would like to connect with me for, feel free to reach out to me. My name is Adhish Rane. You can find my LinkedIn profile. Drop me a message whenever you feel like. Reach out to me. I think ITSA can also share my contact details. I would be glad to help you at any given point of time.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Actually, it was an amazing session. We also had many of the faculties joining us for the webinar. Our own HOD obviously is also here, Ms. Joanne Gomes. She also loved the session. And we also have a faculty convener, which is Ms. Greenhill Toscano. I believe she'd like to share a few words just before we end it.
Yeah, thank you, Lenin. Hello, Adhish. This is Greenhill Toscano. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'm the ITSA teacher coordinator. And I take this opportunity to thank you all for making this webinar a successful one. Okay, Adhish, I'm very glad to see the professional product of SFIT through you. This
so much,
webinar was, yeah, this webinar was actually truly beyond my expectation. It was so informative, Adhish, that it did not wander my, mind for a single moment. And the way you, outline these sections in the beginning itself, in the introduction, actually helped me organize all the, all of your contents and the session. And, Adish, you share your own experience during your career, during your SFIT time. You share your responsibilities. Okay, so that actually I liked a lot because that is what we were looking forward from you all as SFI alumni. Okay, and Adish, it was actually truly informative. You did a very good justice to all the questions that were asked, and thank you once again for making yourself available for this particular session, for the pilot run yesterday, and putting in so much effort to make this webinar informative and making it very successful and effective. Thank you, Adish. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I also like to thank our director, our principal ma'am, INFT Information Technology head, Mrs. Joanne ma'am, for their constant support. Lenin, you have, proved yourself as a true leader for the ITSA. Thank you for all your efforts and all your cooperations with us. And also, I would like to thank Network Admin Johnson for his all the supports to resolve all our technical issues. And yes, of course, my ITSA team, my co-teacher, Ms. Sri Jaiswal, and all of my ITSA students for making it a successful one. Thank you all. Last but not least, all of the participants who have joined and who have patiently listened to the Adhish Rane and also, adhere to all the rules that we have said in the beginning. Thank you all for your patient listening and making this session an interactive session. Thank you all. Good day.
Thank you.
Yeah. Before we end it, I'll just mention a few things. We had students from St. Francis Institute of Technology, Xavier's Institute of Engineering. Then we had a few people who work at Nestle India from BNP Paribas, and even a lot of faculty as well. We had students from also Father Consica Rodriguez Institute of Engineering, Vashi, and a few students from St. Vincent Pallotti College of Engineering, Nagpur. So yeah, and all your worries and all the nervousness, I didn't see any of it. And thanks a lot for agreeing to do this. I believe we've learned a lot today. And also one more part, like you stressed on the emotional intelligence and the mental health part of it towards the end, which is also very, very important, considering, like students can have a lot of pressure from people, from their parents, and even from other, from a peer pressure that somebody else is doing well and I'm not. So thanks a lot for agreeing to do this. Thanks a lot for taking out time and for all the content that you've brought us. Thanks a lot, Adhish.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me over, the entire ITSA team, for organizing this. Of course, at LinkedIn, we are a members first business, and not just that, but it's our way of giving back to the college that has given us so much. So I think it's a responsibility. Even when you guys, when you graduate from SFIT, it will be your responsibility to help your juniors as well. And I'm sure you'll basically make sure that you do that as well. Sharing your knowledge and your insights. So that's one thing I really wanted to focus on, and I'm sure there will be a lot of avenues that we can work towards together in the future as well. So thank you so much for this opportunity again. Having said that, I will take your leave. It's been a wonderful session, so thank you so much for organizing it, and thanks a lot for all the faculty members and most importantly the participants. I think the entire meat of the session was in the questions that you asked. I hopefully was able to do justice. But also one very important thing is, if you have any sort of feedback for me, be it positive, be it negative, it's only going to help me learn more and more. This is in fact the first webinar I've ever done in my life. So I was absolutely nervous for this. I hope I've been able to do justice. But if there is any kind of feedback, do let me know. It'll just help me improve.
Thanks a lot, Adish. Thanks a lot for your professionalism. Also, to all our participants, thanks a lot for taking out your time and joining us today. We'll share a feedback form list with you. Please do ensure that you fill it out. It only helps us improve and be better for you. So please fill out the feedback form, and we look forward to meeting you at our next event. For more updates, you can follow us on Instagram at SFIT_ITSA. So until then, take care and stay safe. Thank you.